Chapter 9. Aaron coughed pitifully and swiped his nose with his fist. Use a tissue, honey. Kaleigh handed him the box, but Aaron seemed unconcerned with snot bubbles at the moment. You have to go skating without me. Mrs. Macaulay can babysit. We already talked about how Jackson's your soulmate. You know what a soulmate is? Aaron nodded solemnly. We watch a lot of soap operas together. Oh my. We're going to have to talk about that later. We'll have to pick another day to hang out with Jackson. Aaron groaned. Just ask her, okay, Mommy? You need to take a day off. The kid was 4 going on 14. I need to be with my sick child, Kaleigh countered. Actually, he articulated slowly, making the words 3 syllables sound like 4. Mrs. Macaulay knows how to heat up soup, too. I don't even have a fever. Kaleigh lowered her hand to feel Aaron's forehead again. Don't you want me to stay with you? The only thing that will make me feel better is if you go with Jackson. Aaron stuck out his lower lip and folded his skinny arms. Kaleigh didn't want to pay for another hour of babysitting, especially when Aaron had a cold, but she guessed it wouldn't hurt to ask their neighbor. The conniving child really seemed to have his heart set on it. She had such a hard time deciding how often to tell him no. Aaron didn't ask for much, but she was also afraid that when she went and nothing romantic happened, he would be disappointed. Then again, maybe a solo, platonic outing would be just the thing to show him once and for all that she and Jackson were just friends. All right, I'll ask, but don't be upset if she says no. She might not want to catch your cold. Mrs. Macaulay replied to Kaleigh's text immediately, expressing that a visit would be just fine. Kaleigh sighed and told Aaron to get his shoes on for the trip across the complex. Now she'd have to redo her ponytail and change from her mom's survival uniform into a decent outfit. Not that she was looking to impress anyone, of course. 1 short hour later, Kaleigh grumbled, I can't believe I let you talk me into this. She looped the long laces of her brown rental skates into a tight knot. Jackson had already expertly tied his own skates and slipped on his old high school jersey. Though he wore jeans, Kaleigh could picture him suited up with padding, helmet, and all. His ankles didn't buckle like she feared hers would. In fact, he was hopping from blade to blade with a restless anticipation as he waited for Kaleigh to finish. Although she didn't have to look after Aaron for the afternoon, she got the distinct feeling that she'd still be filling the responsible adult role. It's good to try new things, Jackson replied, peering through the lobby window to the ice beyond. Next time, I'm picking the activity. Jackson's eyebrows rose, and she realized that she had implied they would see each other again. If I survived to see another day, she added lamely. She grabbed onto the railing that led into the rink, already wobbling off ice. Here, let me help you. Jackson reached out as if to peel her white-knuckled death grip from the railing. No, she said firmly, and hobbled her way to the door, opening it to a wave of cold air. Her fleece quarter-zip pullover and yoga pants seemed too thin now. Jackson snorted as she paused to pull a pair of gloves and earmuffs out of her pockets. What, did you leave your parka at home? If we get moving, you won't need any of that. She glared at him, but still took his arm as she eased onto the ice. Try standing taller. I hate you. Kaleigh huffed, since all the energy needed for an eloquent response was already engaged in staying upright. She released Jackson to clutch the plexiglass ledge. Once she was steady, Kaleigh did try to stand straighter. Slowly, she crept forward. Have you ever been skating before? Jackson asked. Once at an outdoor rink with my mom. It was Christmas time. You're not a first-timer then. I was only 6. I barely remember going, let alone how to skate. But that wasn't true. She could picture every detail. She remembered the way that practice skaters flew around the outer edges, just like on TV, twirling, jumping, and landing lightly on their feet. She remembered the peppermint hot chocolate she and Lana drank together on the hard wooden benches. For once, Lana hadn't been grumpy, and she hadn't had a selfish agenda in taking Kaleigh there. Lana had even shared a rare detail from her childhood. She'd loved skating at Christmas time. Kaleigh remembered no other time in her own childhood that she had been so happy. "You're getting better," Jackson said, interrupting her melancholy thoughts. He was skating backwards, slaloming from side to side. "You could probably skate away from the wall now." "I don't want to fall." "I won't let you." His hands were an invitation, his eyes a promise, a plea for her to believe him. She wondered if he was talking about skating anymore at all. Even through her gloves, when their fingers touched, she shivered, but it was from the heat instead of the cold. Jackson stopped showing off and glided slowly before her, his blades crunching on the smooth ice. "There. That wasn't so hard, was it?" She shook her head, though her insides were still quaking. He wrapped his arms around her wrists, and the grip proved that he was strong enough to support her. If only she had that kind of confidence in his internal qualities. "See, you just had to let go and know someone's here to catch you. Someone who cares about you." Her insides twisted. Aaron's dad had claimed to care about her too. He cared until she discovered she was pregnant. When things got tough, she found out just how uncaring people could be. "That's a pretty phrase," she bit out. "You should try it on someone who's never fallen." Jackson considered her words and then tossed his head in the direction of the bleachers. "Sure, it would be safer if you sat down over there, but what would you be missing?" Now that she felt more secure in Jackson's grip, Kaleigh turned her attention away from her feet's choppy movements to relish the breeze created from their momentum. The weight of her blades on the ice and his hands under hers were the only things grounding her in reality. Gliding like this, she could almost imagine that she was flying. Jackson's grip loosened and her eyes snapped wide open. She was skating all by herself. That was, until her toe pick caught in a small dip in the ice. She gasped, arms flailing, and fell forward right onto Jackson's chest. The impact sent his blades flying out from under him, and he toppled backwards. His six-pack was not a soft landing space, and her breath left her in a whoosh. But at least his arms had snapped around her and kept her from hitting the ice. Kaleigh took in the pain in his expression and remembered his therapy session. "Will your knee be okay?" Jackson grunted. "Yeah, I don't know about my backside, though." He watched her for a breath, and the amusement in his gaze flamed into a fire. But then he blinked and carefully placed her beside him. Kaleigh berated herself. "What, did you think he was actually going to kiss you?" Jackson stretched, then rose with a groan. Kaleigh did the same, laughing when she saw his wet jeans. "Are you cold now?" she asked sweetly. "Not even a little," he grinned. Jackson took just one of her hands this time. She let him without complaint and wondered if more than one best memory would be made in an ice arena. I hope Aaron wasn't too upset he missed out today. Jackson yanked off his skates and swiped the blades with a towel. A sniff of musty air made him think he should have washed his gear before coming out. He slid his soft navy soakers on the blades and nestled the skates into his duffel bag. The bag still boasted 11 in white block numerals. It was funny how a number that had once brought him so much joy and glory became obsolete in a few years' time. If he went back to the Ashwood area, he doubted that anyone there would recognize him. "No, Aaron wasn't upset about it being just the two of us," Kaleigh said with an irritation in her voice Jackson didn't understand. He shrugged it off. "I had a great time, but I feel bad about him lying sick at home. Does he need anything?" "Nah, this age. Aaron's a germ magnet. I keep the tissues and soups in stock." Kaleigh returned her rental skates to the counter, and they meandered toward the building's exit. A pro shop to their left caught Jackson's eye. "Would you mind if I sent a souvenir home with you?" Kaleigh bit her lip. "I guess that would be okay." Jackson swung open the glass door and nodded to the high school girl flipping through a magazine at the small room's cash register. Kaleigh ran her fingers appreciatively over bedazzled figure skating dresses and brightly hued jackets. Her hand caught a price tag. "You don't want to look," Jackson said. "Trust me." She scrunched up her nose and dropped the tag. "You're probably right." Jackson strolled toward the hockey section. "I usually am." She rolled her eyes, but he was glad that she'd stopped taking his boasting so seriously. If she only knew how insecure he could get, she would never take it so seriously again. Jackson looked to the jerseys, but then cast his eyes over to the skates. Kaleigh followed his gaze. "No." "Why not?" "They're too expensive." Jackson waved that protest away. She put her finger up. "And dangerous. I'm not putting him into lessons." Jackson was already scouring the shelves. "I'll teach him." Kaleigh slid a hand over her face. "Let's take this slow, all right? We're already spending a lot of time together." "Take what slow?" Kaleigh made a strangled noise. "You know, our friendship." Jackson nodded. "I'll take it. It's a lot better than you viewing me as your mortal enemy." She stepped closer. "Need I remind you why I'm tempted to see you that way?" "No," Jackson said, sobered. Would he ever shake his past? Kaleigh turned to look at the display. "I wish I could buy things like this for Aaron." "This?" Jackson threw a hand toward the rows of boxes. "This is nothing compared to the love you give Aaron. You give him everything you have. Take it from someone whose parents were expert gift givers. The most perfect and expensive presents can't make up for the lack of feeling behind them." "And," she started slowly, "there's feeling behind this gift?" Jackson swallowed, casting a glance at the teenager whose magazine pages had stopped flipping. This wasn't exactly the place he would have chosen to pour his heart out, but he was afraid Kaleigh wouldn't give him another chance if he stayed silent now. His eyes met her blue ones, shining like twin raindrops in her heart-shaped face. "It holds more feeling than I've ever felt before." The air between them crackled. Time slowed until the cashier popped her bubblegum. Kaleigh and Jackson pivoted toward her, and she hurriedly stuck her face back in her reading material. Jackson scratched the back of his head. "So," he drew out the word, "would something like this work?" He tapped a display skate. It was black, shot through with neon green stripes. "Aaron would love it," she admitted. "Do they have a kid's size 11? Jackson pulled a 10 out of the middle of the stack. "We're in luck. You always want your skates to fit a little tighter than your normal size." A wave of nostalgia rolled over him as he recalled getting his first pair of skates. Though they may not have been as thoughtfully chosen, the hockey lessons which his parents paid for were the road to countless happy days. Days filled with rambunctious kids and encouraging adults. Jackson would sweat out his frustration and have something positive to put his energy towards. He was lucky his father's interest in perfection didn't extend from his work to sports, or else Marcus probably would have taught Jackson to hate hockey too. Kaleigh folded her arms and faced the door while the employee rang up Jackson's purchase. He quickly checked the racks of gear for extra smalls and added a helmet, padding, and a bag to the pile, wiping out the store's meager youth section. Kaleigh peeked back at the register. "What's all this?" "For safety." She could hardly argue with that. Although Jackson was happy to provide the equipment for Aaron, he would have to find a way to give Kaleigh something that wasn't monetary. Jackson couldn't assume that the way his parents had always shown their love would work with anyone else. After all, it hadn't worked on him. Only one thing came to mind. He recalled the days when his Nona would bustle around her son's sterile kitchen and tusk, addressing the air in the place of her absent child. "Oh, Marcus, food should be messy, colorful, joyful." Jackson's father was always working during her visits. But that fact didn't sting as much when Nona started pulling ingredients for butter cookies out of her canvas bag. The warmth she created didn't come from the preheated oven. Though her cooking was a simple act, it was more the time and effort she put in that made an impact on Jackson. The fact that someone had thought of him. Isaac's voice came to Jackson's mind, encouraging him to try persisting through hard tasks. The learning curve for hosting Aaron and Kaleigh for a meal might be painful, but Jackson knew that was what he had to do. Chapter 10. A few minutes into their next shared shift, Jackson slapped his hands down on either side of Kaleigh's register. "Don't worry, I'm here." Kaleigh startled and dropped the receipt paper she'd been loading into the printer. The roll unfurled in a long line all the way across the room. "Sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to scare you." "I know. What is wrong with me?" Kaleigh thought. She shouldn't turn into a klutz just because Jackson was around. "Green," Jenny barked. "You're late. I need you to work the other end of the store." The manager then turned her gaze to Kaleigh, who was standing with fingers still outstretched from where the roll had been. "Are you going to clean this up?" Kaleigh shook her head free of the cobwebs. "Of course." She hurried to the work. Jenny wasn't usually so curt, but Jackson had been distracting Kaleigh more often when they worked together. He'd have to be careful or she'd be called into the office next. Mariana walked out of the stockroom and nearly tripped over the discarded receipt roll. "Kaleigh? Oh, here, let me help you." She picked up the plastic core and started winding the paper back into place. "Thanks," Kaleigh answered, returning to the register to pick up the opposite end. "No problem." Mariana tossed her head to force her waist-length curls back over her shoulder. "Good thing we haven't opened for the day." Mariana handed the replenished roll to Kaleigh and huffed. "I'm not a fan of early shifts, but Ava roped me into going to this library sale later, so I had to free up my afternoon." "Really? I was thinking of going to that sale too." "I'm not a reader, but Ava needs to build up her classroom library. I'm just coming for moral support. You should meet us there." "Oh," Kaleigh swallowed hard. "I'm actually going with my son." Mariana gasped. "That's great. I'd love to meet your son." "He's going to hang out in the kids section and want to look at every DVD." "Kaleigh, it's fine. Unless you guys would rather spend time just the two of you." "Actually, it's always just the two of us. Aaron might like being a part of a bigger group for a change." "Perfect. We should be there around 2. "Sounds good," Kaleigh said, though she wasn't so sure. 7 hours later, and the Taylors were bumping elbows with what must have been 50 of Summer Shore's book lovers. It had been a miracle they'd been able to spot Mariana and Ava across the overflowing crowd in the community library. It had been awkward for Kaleigh to see Ava, ever since Jackson had flirted with Kaleigh, upset the girl, and left her crying at Hydrangea. Kaleigh hadn't meant to interfere with their relationship. She hadn't even known about it. But the workplace drama left her feeling guilty all the same. Yet Ava was clearly over it. She hadn't acted weird last time she saw Kaleigh at the Fall Fest. Now Ava and Mariana were making a big show over Aaron's book sale choices, a board book about construction vehicles, some seek and find titles, and a few classic children's stories that Kaleigh found. "That's so good for him, you know," Ava whispered to Kaleigh, "to start reading to him this young." "I hope so." It was hard to feel threatened by Ava when she was being so nice. "Thanks for being good sports and supporting my book buying habit." Ava's thin arms strained under the weight of her near-full cardboard box. "Enabling your book buying habit is more like it, nerd," Mariana teased. Despite her complaints, she'd scouted out a few cookbooks to take home. "This is exactly why we need reading," Ava sniffed. "A person can improve her mind and learn to use her words for good and not evil." Kaleigh laughed, too caught up in the silly exchange to remember not to draw attention to herself. "Do you want to look around some more, Kaleigh?" Ava asked. "Well," Kaleigh peeked at Aaron, who was flipping through Mary's new recipes. "It's okay, Mommy, you can go," he said. All right, Kaleigh told Ava, thanks. Kaleigh chose a few thrillers which looked promising and an old physical therapy textbook. When she saw Aaron was still occupied with his two new friends, she couldn't resist taking one last pass through the kids section. She was rewarded with a pre-kindergarten workbook in decent condition. Once they brought their hauls to the checkout line, Aaron turned to Kaleigh. Why didn't Jackson come? Kaleigh's cheeks flushed. I didn't invite him. He doesn't have to go everywhere we go. But I like when he comes places with us. Aren't you having fun? Mm-hmm, he said, swinging two of his books under his arms. After a beat of silence, Ava casually said, I think Jackson's really changed since his accident. Oh? Kaleigh studied the workbook's creased spine. He comes to church twice a week, and he's not just floating through. He's been pitching in at service events, trying to learn during Bible study. Learn what? Kaleigh asked in spite of herself. She was intrigued by this picture of Jackson the scholar. What Jesus did for us and how to live now that we know it? You should come by and see for yourself. I don't think so, Kaleigh smirked. The roof might collapse if I step inside. Don't be silly. We'd love to have you and Aaron. Thanks for the invitation. Sustaining the light tone appropriate for a cordial afternoon out had been a change for Kaleigh. The venom in her last comment, however, slammed the door on further conversation and fit her voice as comfortably as her favorite pair of knit gloves. The memory of her senior classmates staring at her swollen belly hadn't left Kaleigh's mind easily. How much worse would the gossip be behind the doors of a place dedicated to holiness? Ava and Mariana had been supportive today, but church was not a part of Kaleigh's plan. Aaron didn't have to wait long to see Jackson again. As soon as Kaleigh had driven home from the library sale, a text came in from Jackson, asking to set up Aaron's first private lesson for the following day. In the warming house of the rink, it had taken a full 20 minutes to unbox and put on all the new hockey gear. Are you sure all of this is necessary? Kaleigh asked, pursing her lips. Starkly framed by the entrance to the white ice, Aaron looked like a dark foam hockey monster had swallowed him up. Only his chocolate eyes were visible through his face mask. He needs to get used to the weight of the gear if he's going to ever learn properly. Where's my stick? Aaron asked. You don't need 'em yet. Lesson 1 is how to stand. I know how to stand, silly. Not on ice, you don't. Jackson bent down and put a hand on Aaron's shoulders. Don't you want to learn how to be a star hockey player? Kaleigh cleared her throat. Jackson rolled his eyes. And learn how to have fun and make friends with all the other players? Yeah! Then you've got to listen to your coach. Aaron grinned at the word coach and nodded. Jackson rubbed his hands together. All right then, parents to the stands. It was difficult to walk away, but it wasn't as if Kaleigh would be much help on the ice anyway. It was funny. The other day, Jackson had described the bleachers as a place of safety, but Kaleigh felt more helpless watching Aaron than she did skating herself. But Jackson kept his hands wrapped around Aaron's armpits, and her little guy was soon taking choppy strides down the ice. Skating backwards, Jackson showed Aaron how to angle his blade to gain more power. Much to Kaleigh's surprise, the next thing Jackson did was to lead Aaron to the center of the rink and ease him down to his backside. Then he plopped down beside him, demonstrating how to crawl up on all fours. Jackson did a decent imitation of Duke, howling at the other public session skaters and wagging his tongue. Aaron joined in with delight. Jackson helped Aaron kneel, pick one foot up and then the other to return to a standing position. Next, he put their backs against the plexiglass and pretended to squat down and eat a meal. Kaleigh didn't see how Aaron was going to learn anything if he kept on giggling, but they practiced eating again and again, keeping their shoulders back. They pushed off the side and skated a few strides forward on their own, with Jackson modeling how to move his arms backward and forward. Jackson gently lifted Aaron's chin when he kept looking at his feet until eventually Aaron's stance improved. When Aaron successfully replicated the proper technique, Jackson slapped his hand with a big high five. It was a half hour before Aaron started to lose focus, dancing around and scraping circles in the ice instead of listening to Coach. Snack time, Kaleigh guessed, and she met them back at the entrance. You did so well, she told Aaron. He beamed and ran ahead to the warming house. She and Jackson followed side by side. The heat inside the room prickled Kaleigh's chilled skin painfully, but she was more concerned with the attraction swelling in her chest like a physical force. Seeing this big, sometimes lazy man turn all the power of his attention on her little guy had been absolutely heart-wrenching. As flustered as she neglected to argue with him about buying their pizzas and sodas at the concession stand. Instead, they carried their food in peace and sat at a hard plastic table. Did you see me, Mommy? Aaron asked. I didn't fall down once. I saw. That was better than I did in my ice skating lesson. Kaleigh's cheeks flamed at the memory of how that lesson had ended. It's okay. You just need some more practice. You're right as usual, my little wise guy. Kaleigh gently pinched his cheek. Do you guys mind if I ask a blessing over the food? Jackson asked. Oh, sure. Kaleigh motioned for Aaron to fold his hands and close his eyes since she was sure he had never seen anyone pray before. Dear God, Jackson's voice quavered, and he took a deep breath. Thank you for our time here today. Please bless this food to our bodies. In Jesus' name, amen. His voice had seemed to get quicker the closer he got to the end of the prayer. That was short, Aaron remarked. Kaleigh bumped his knee under the table and shook her head. Jackson smiled. I guess I just need some more practice, too. Aaron blew on his pizza slice. When you talk to God, does he really listen? Yes, I think so. And you can ask him for anything? Sure. Aaron grinned. I know what I'm going to ask him for. Kaleigh could imagine what he was referring to. She interjected, So Jackson, when did you start skating? When I was about Aaron's age. He sipped on a soda and launched into the full history. Kaleigh was glad the topic had shifted away from prayer, but it had been nice to learn that Jackson wasn't comfortable doing everything. Sometimes with all his bluster, he made it seem like he was. Now Jackson was letting them close enough to see his vulnerabilities along with his skills, which added to the intoxicating suspicion that he was someone she was right to put her faith in. So, when he invited them to his apartment for a home-cooked dinner, at the sight of Aaron's glowing face and Jackson's hopeful one, it was an easier yes to give.